Hi, my name is Alessandra Piemontese, and this is my critical reflection for William Brown's module Guerrilla Filmmaking. I've always been fascinated by films, and one of my favourites when I was younger was Jurassic Park. In the bonus features, Jack Horner, a paleontologist, spoke about how he helped design the dinosaurs. He said that the dinosaurs should move and act more like birds rather than lizards. When I decided that I actually wanted to make the animals of Roehampton, I decided I wanted to do something around this concept. The part of Jurassic Park that left a lasting impression on me was when they first see the Brontosaurus. It reminded me, on a slightly smaller scale, of how I felt when I first came to Roehampton. This campus is so rich with wildlife, and I really wanted to capture how I first felt when I visited it. So I didn't want to give the audience an anticlimax when they saw the goose. I wanted to show it off for this beautiful little creature that it was. I was originally using my DSLR, which kept malfunctioning on me because I hadn't formatted my card properly. I also only had my 50mm lens on me, so I wasn't getting the shots I wanted. I wanted to frame the geese from below so that they'd look the same size as the trees, and the 50 was just blurring out the background. So I decided to use my phone instead, and I actually got exactly what I wanted. The wider angle looked so much better, and I was actually able to get closer to them because of the smaller size of my recording device. The brief for this piece said no synchronised sound, and although the clips from Jurassic Park is synchronised, I'm going to argue that the footage that I filmed myself wasn't synchronised. So I kind of stuck to the brief. The teddy bear represents loss, so my film is saying that refugees are refugees because of what they've lost. They've lost their homes, and that's why they are seeking refuge. Why is a refugee? I used a teddy bear to confront people with this quite harsh reminder of children. A lot of refugees are children, and I think that it's important to take that into consideration when we're barricading our country and not allowing them entrance. I always knew that I was going to cut before the teddy reached the weir, because I think it's important to leave the audience with that same sense of uncertainty that a refugee would feel when they approach our borders. But as I watched it float towards the weir, I'll be honest, I'd grown quite attached to this teddy, and so I jumped in and saved it. In the act of doing this, I actually realised something. Sentimentality is a luxury of the first world. Syrian kids are not allowed to be sentimental about anything, because they're going to lose a lot more than a teddy bear on their way here. They might lose their parents, and they've already lost their homes and their country. This is also why I've called it Lost Along the Way. The image of the bear reminds people that somewhere there's a little girl or boy that's lost something, and since it's a film about refugees, it begs them to question what else has the little girl or little boy lost. I appreciated the fact that we were challenged to make the films in only one take, and it also might inspire a lot more thought given the subject of refugees. I don't think people realise how long and treacherous a refugee's journey is in getting here, and I think that that single long take could be symbolic of that journey. And because in my film you're forced to stay with the bear, there are no cuts or interruptions. It gives you time to process and think about what's going on screen, and your thoughts aren't being cut short by an edit. I chose to make this film in Folkestone because I believe that it better represents the UK in this current time than London does. Although I may have got broader answers in London, I don't think that London actually speaks for the UK. London didn't vote Brexit. I believe that this narrow provincial mindset is reflected subtly in my film. Most people only name problems that were relevant to themselves, and most people who wanted to speak to me were straight white men.
Women have got the vote, women are it's more of an equal thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think it works like that, mate. I found it strange that they didn't speak of the inequalities that they faced as men, like always needing to be the breadwinner, less chances of getting child custody, and so on and so forth. Most men just didn't take it seriously, or kind of alluded to how uncomfortable feminism made them feel. And most girls that I asked didn't actually want to be in the film. One girl even hid behind a menu so that she wouldn't have to take part. There was only one interview that I didn't include. I didn't realise how drunk she was when I approached her. After just 1 minute of filming her, her friend actually asked me to stop. I wish I'd found her earlier in the night, in a more fit state to answer, but the footage that I got from her was incomprehensible, and I actually made a moral decision not to include her. I just felt that she was too drunk. Her gender has nothing to do from her exclusion from my film. Had I questioned a man who was that drunk and unable to stand up, I wouldn't have included him either. In fact, I spent a lot of time with the men talking to them about inequality, and after a while their speech started to slur, and that's when I put my camera down. It's all about consent, really. If I'm a drink in and you're a drink in, then it's fine. If I'm a few drinks in and you are on the floor, then you can't give consent to being in my film. The reason I decided to play a game with them was because I felt like it would be an icebreaker, and it would also force them to quickly stimulate some ideas about inequality. When people have got an idea in their mind, then they're more likely to go on and talk about it. When I think of love, true love, I think about what it endures. The strongest love that I've ever known is for my family. In the past, me and my family have said some choice things to one another that I know that we don't mean, as have all families. And many of the arguments that we've had have literally been about nothing. Somebody's in a bad mood and they project their feelings onto you, you ask them what's wrong, and then suddenly you're both screaming at each other. I wanted to capture that in my film, so I used really fast-paced editing to cut sentences in half, just to give the idea of an argument rather than see an actual argument unfold. I was quite inspired by the first Perfect Human film that Jorgen made, in the 5 Obstructions, where he's limited to only 12 frames. Even though I didn't limit myself to how long the shots would be, I just knew that they'd get gradually shorter as the argument escalated. I liked the idea that we were only being shown moments of a person. While I was watching it, the 12 frames gave me an idea of that man, and then my mind started to fill in the blanks, and the 12 frames stopped feeling jarring and began to flow. I hope that something similar would happen with audiences when they watched my film. They'd project an argument that perhaps they'd had with their family onto the screen to fill in the missing words, and then be able to identify and connect with it more. What is home? There were so many things that I wanted to do for this, but I settled on the people who are closest to me and how they've affected my life and shaped me. My family is utterly incapable of spending more than 4 years in one house, and I've loved every house in which I've lived in, and that's why I felt it was really important to include all 16 of them in my opening. But I decided to use the Google Maps images of them because I wanted to convey the detachment that I felt to them compared to my very personal portraits of my family that I took against the coloured backgrounds. Seeing as we have a family business in which we work heavily with colour, colour is very important to us as a family. I spoke fairly colloquially in this film. I spoke as if I was speaking to one of my friends. I didn't hold back on my swearing. If I had, I don't think that I'd have actually been true to the way that I speak. There is actually a part in my feedback that I wanted to address directly, just because I think it's really interesting and that it's prompted me to think more deeply about my film and why I've done some of the things in there, and how it could come across to other people as well. Who I am today is apparently a woman whose face is hidden by a camera, so identity is only half revealed. The film takes away and hides as much as it reveals and gives. That's actually a really interesting point about this film, and also about any kind of autobiographical or personal films that one could make. It actually reminded me of a quote from one of the readings. "Nothing and nobody lets himself be imprisoned in a picture frame, no matter how gilded. It is possible that art gives us a vision of society or of human nature, and that, at the same time, it cannot be defined as a vision of society or of human nature." I'm not this film, and I can't show you everything about me in a 3-minute film, not even in a feature-length one, nor could anyone for that matter. Film is a beautiful medium, but it's still a flat 2D medium. It can give the idea of being 3D, like you could film a chair, but you could never know what it's actually like to sit on that chair just by watching it on the screen. Seeing as I only had 3 minutes, I decided to show you what was most important to me, and I suppose I showed you, and my friends and my family, whom the film was made for, the me that I'd like you to see. Ultimately, I'm answering the question, what is home? Home is where one feels safe and at ease, so that's why I chose to focus on my close friends and family. The film is, in all honesty, just a tribute to them. It had the desired effect. It made them laugh, and it made them give me hugs, and although only briefly, it made them realise why I appreciated them, and made them feel loved. And if I'm in any way proud of myself, or the person that I am today, it's thanks to them, and I wanted to let them know. Difficulties I encountered and problems. Is there even an easy place for an amateur filmmaker to film? I had problems shooting outside, I had problems shooting inside, shooting in public areas such as Richmond Park. I'd encounter problems like noise, wind, or people. Inside, I was filming in my house, in my kitchen more specifically, which was a communal space for my family, where people would come in and cut onions while you're shooting. So one would have to compromise and go with their second take. Before this module, those moments would have really bothered me. Everybody knows the infamous Kubrick story where he made Shelley Duvall retake the batting scene 127 times. That's what I idolised. That's the kind of perfection that I'd always strived for. But having made these films on this module, I've realised that there's something almost mechanical in that. It creates an anxiety in you and your actors. And I believe that that might be why I haven't really enjoyed making films before, and I've been so afraid of picking up a camera. And as banal as this sounds, it stops being fun. Ultimately, if you're not having fun whilst you're expressing yourself and your concepts through this medium, then why are you doing it? Obviously, if you've got things to say, then you want to make sure that you're conveying them well through your films. But I've learned that your films don't have to be aesthetically pleasing or perfect in order to express your point or capture people's interests and provoke thought. All of my friends and family have seen my films. I was expecting them to like some more than others, but everyone liked or had something to say about all of them. They didn't focus on the way the films looked. They were interested in what I had to say as a filmmaker. Why is a refugee? Got a lot of questions. Does the bear represent children? Loss of innocence? And that was actually the film that I thought was the least aesthetically pleasing. I want to mention a couple of quotes from a reading that I found really insightful about the way that I looked at films, and I also found it quite encouraging. This is speaking of professional filmmakers. They pay too much attention to whether the film is good enough to reflect their professional competencies. For example, the picture should be as delicate as an oil painting, or the mise-en-scène is supposed to match that of Antonioni's films. Even the twinkling spotlight needs to be right on the face of the actor. I find myself judging my films and other people's films in this way, and I'm not even a professional filmmaker. They go on to speak about amateur filmmakers and how they naturally exceed the existing professional evaluation method because they are open to more promising film forms. This struck me because I've always felt that the medium of film is not being used to its full capacity, especially in mainstream cinema. We should hark back to the old days of cinema of attractions, where they were still just experimenting with this new amazing medium. It made me realise that I should be out there filming and experimenting, rather than trying to stay in what the industry thinks is aesthetically pleasing. I told myself when I started making these films for this module, you might not be very good, but that is okay. Previous to these films, I've made only 4 solo projects, and like a teenage girl flicking through pictures of a magazine of unrealistic beauty standards, I've been comparing my work to the films I idolised, and realising that they're just not going to compare. But that shouldn't stop me from making films. When a child picks up a pencil and begins to draw, you don't judge the quality of its drawing. You praise them for having picked up the pencil and created something. And that's how I've approached these films. I've praised myself for having gone out there and made them. And that's one of the reasons I challenged myself to do 5 rather than just 3. Thank you for the module, and thank you for watching.